morning, everyone, from the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside Moscow. The flight control teams here are monitoring the final minutes of the rendezvous between the International Space Station and its newest module, the Swesda service module. Over here in the flight control room, all has gone very smoothly throughout the night. Again, it's 4 a.m. here in Moscow, 8 p.m. on the east coast of the United States, and again, all going very smoothly with the final minutes of the rendezvous. At this moment, the two spacecraft are out of communications range with the ground. All of the automatic sequence in place and performing as expected. At this point, the two spacecraft should be about 2.2 or so kilometers apart, with the Zarya control module and the Unity connecting node closing in on the newest module, Swesda, at a rate of about 4.6 meters per second, or about 10 miles per hour or so. We should be getting our communications link with the space station and the service module, the Swesda, at 34 minutes after the hour, so about at 1 minute earlier than had been predicted earlier, and that as a result of some of the rendezvous maneuvers that have taken place throughout the wee hours of the morning here in Moscow. The planned docking time, though still scheduled for 44 minutes after the hour, actually could take place about a minute early, so we'll be watching that closely during the final minutes of this planned rendezvous and docking. Let's recap for you some of the activities that have occurred during the last several hours, starting with last night at about 8 o'clock or so Eastern Time, 8:48 p.m. to be exact. That was the point where the Zarya control module's thruster jets were fired in a phase correction burn that was a very small burn to set the stage for tonight's rendezvous maneuvers. The first of those rendezvous maneuvers tonight occurred just before 10 p.m. Here in Moscow. That was just before 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and that again was a fairly small burn of about 1.5 meters per second, and it lasted about 8 seconds or so. It was followed some 45 minutes later by another of those rendezvous maneuvers, that one also about 1.5 meters per second, lasting about 7 seconds, and sets the stage for the rendezvous maneuvers in the final regime, that is, with the onboard software now in a final automatic rendezvous sequence. Also, as we set the stage through the rendezvous maneuvers closing in on Swesda, the flight control teams monitored both spacecraft through ground sites over Russia about an hour and a half or so apart throughout last night and this morning. And several of those activities included interactions between the flight control team here and the flight control team there in Houston, and we'll be going there shortly for updates on activities there. The Unity node, in anticipation of the docking, the heaters that keep the shell temperatures within range, desired ranges, were turned off, that occurring about 10 p.m. Moscow time last night, and the node's power was reduced. Its early communication system was turned off to allow the Zarya control modules onboard computers to take over the rendezvous and activate the automatic docking system called CORS. There's a whole sequence of events that occurs basically in an automatic mode. The flight assignments, as they're called, are uplinked from the ground and are stored on board, and those are basically time-tagged commands that are activated in sequence during these final minutes of the rendezvous and docking. The Zarya control module's solar arrays have been positioned for the docking, and so have the service module. The service module was reported to be in the docking position, or the docking at a little after time, just after 2 a.m. here in Moscow, and everything has gone exactly by the book on the timeline. There have been no issues really that the team has worked whatsoever as we head down toward these final minutes of the flight of these two spacecraft as separate vehicles before the scheduled docking. Again, the docking, though targeted for 44 minutes after the hour, could come about a minute or so earlier than that, and we actually do expect to have television from a black and white camera on the Swesda service module as the space station closes in on it, and that television should actually be activated, and we hope to have that and bring it to you starting about 36 or so minutes after the hour, well in advance of the planned time of the docking. So all is continuing to go very smoothly. We're now 5 minutes after the hour, which puts the two spacecraft now about just under 2 kilometers apart, with that closing rate slowing down to a point now about 2.5 meters per second. In about 5 minutes or so, the two spacecraft should actually be aligned perfectly with the Swesda service module pointed toward the Zarya control module. And then the final rendezvous sequence will begin with the two spacecraft closing down to a point of about 200 meters or so, and there will be a point of station keeping to ensure that all is go for the docking. On the Zarya control module, its docking mechanism has been activated, and that docking mechanism was tested a day or so ago, and now is in the docking position and ready for that contact and capture of the Swesda service module. Swesda has been flying free since its launch July 12th and has gone through an extensive 14-day checkout. It completed all of its rendezvous maneuvers just a couple of days ago, and now has basically become the passive vehicle, while Zarya, the first module of the International Space Station, was launched back in 1998 in November, is now going to be the passive vehicle controlling all of the rendezvous maneuvers for this final approach and docking. And again, this entire sequence is automatic, as all of the commands have been uplinked to the onboard computers, and Zarya now is the controlling vehicle as it closes in for that docking with the International Space Station. The docking actually is scheduled to take place high above Kazakhstan, and depending on the exact time of the docking, should take place again over Kazakhstan in daylight over Russian ground stations. So we'll get our communications link back here in about 30 minutes or so, and we'll take this opportunity to get an update on activities in Houston at the Mission Control Center, where my colleague Rob Navy is traveling halfway around the world to Baikonur for the launch, and now back in Houston. So Rob, we'll hand it over to you so you can give us a flavor of what's happening there in Houston.
Well, good evening and good morning, Kyle, from the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where on a steamy midsummer night, a dream is about to be realized with the link-up of the International Outpost and the Swesda service module. Here in the Flight Control Room, a team of station flight controllers led by ISS Flight Director Mark Fering has been on console for the past 7 hours, gearing up for the docking, which is scheduled to take place about 35 minutes from now. Fering is the lead flight director for this segment or increment of ISS operations. He is on the right side of your screen with his back to the camera at the moment. He has been overseeing the preparation of the service module from the U.S. perspective, monitoring all of the data and telemetry streaming into here from the Russian Mission Control Center, and his counterparts, the teams of Russian flight controllers representing Swesda's manufacturer, RSC Energia, and those overseeing Zarya's operation, the Krunichev flight control team. With Fering on console at this hour, on the left side of your screen in that picture, was Milt Heflin, the Deputy Chief Flight Director. He is seated will remain as the lead ISS flight director during the STS-106 mission. American astronaut will spend almost a week docked to the newly expanded International Space Station. Their goal is essentially to lay out the red carpet so-called Expedition 1 crew, comprised of Expedition Commander Shepard, Soyuz Commander Yuri Gidzenko, and Flight Engineer Sergei Krikalev. They are due launched later this fall on a Soyuz rocket from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan for a docking to the aft port of the Swesda 2 days later for the start of a 4-month stay on orbit. The STS-106 crew will be busy unloading supplies and logistical items from both a double space hab module housed in the rear of the cargo bay of the shuttle Atlantis and from a newly arrived Russian Progress resupply ship, which is scheduled to be launched from Baikonur on August 6th for a docking with Swesda and the ISS on August the 8th. But for tonight, the focus of attention is on Swesda and the docking with the ISS. Ferring has a team of specialists with him tonight, including 4 critical flight controllers. The first is the TOPO, the Trajectory Operations Officer, Scott Paul, who along with his counterpart in the Russian Control Center, Tom Erkenswick, have followed the progress of the orbital chase of Swesda to reach the ISS. They have worked closely with Russian ballistics officers and with U.S. Space Command in Colorado Springs to monitor the location of both vehicles since Swesda's launch 2 weeks ago. Next is the OSO, the Operations Support Officer, Sean Melody, who will be monitoring the mechanical docking systems on both Zarya, the active vehicle for tonight's link-up, and Swesda, the passive vehicle or target. The OSO, as he is called, will relay information to Ferring that 12 sets of hooks and latches on the Zarya side of the docking interface have begun to engage shortly after contact and capture of the 2 vehicles, and later that similar set of hooks and latches will have engaged on Swesda to form a hard mate between the 2 craft. The ECLIS officer, or the Environmental Systems Officer here in the ISS Flight Control Room, Kwatsi Alabaru, also plays an important role both tonight and over the next few days. He will be monitoring the pressurization of the vestibule or passageway between Swesda and Zarya to ensure a tight seal between the 2 modules. Leak checks will be performed by the Russian Flight Control Team through the weekend, all the time with the oversight of the U.S. Flight Control Team here in Houston. And finally, late Saturday into early Sunday, the ODIN, or Onboard Data Interface and Network Officer, Makrisha Alabaru, will be on console with Ferring, monitoring the reconfiguration of computers as command of ISS operations is transferred from Zarya's computers to Swesda's computers, part of the command and data handling system for the new module, which is supplied by the European Space Agency. So, Kyle, here in Houston, a busy time as the milestone moment of docking approaches. Now back to you in Korolyov.
Thanks, Rob. Again, back here supporting the International Space Station Flight Control Team that Rob was just mentioning is a Houston support group, and the Houston support group actually works around the clock to work and interface with the Russian flight controllers a bit more closely, obviously, and the team is led here by Patty Moore, who's a veteran of not only working on Phase 2, which is the construction of the International Space Station, but she also supported a number of the activities and served back in the Phase 1 Pro Mir Pram. Michael Boggs is also on console. He's serving as an operations lead primarily for the touch with his counterparts here on the Russian, being updated on the health of the service module as these final minutes tick by, leading toward that docking. Also here is veteran flight director from Houston, Bob Castle. The rendezvous and docking sequence that's been taking place over the last couple of weeks since Swesda's launch. The plan now, again, is once the 2 vehicles actually come close to each other, is for that docking to take place again during a daylight pass over the Russian ground stations. And as you see from this map, looking from the balcony out over the International Space Station Flight Control Room here, the plan again in daylight to have the 2 spacecraft dock during ground station passes over the Russian ground stations. The plan as the docking takes place will be for the probe or the docking mechanism on the Zarya control module to contact the Swesda's docking system as well. This is an identical docking system to that the shuttle used for the Shuttle Mir program. The docking probe actually is made up of 2 parts, which is the probe itself and then its structural ring. and the probe actually forms the first mechanical link at the point of contact between the two spacecraft. The probe has 4 actual small petals, and each one of those petals has sensors on them, which are designed to indicate the initial contact. And when that occurs, there are 4 capture latches with sensors that indicate or that show the computers of that mechanical capture. And then 2 contact pins with sensors also are used to indicate the contact. And once that happens, the motor starts place in an initial or a first contact with the vehicle, and then any one of those pedals can trip the sensors which cause that mechanical link. And then once those capture latches are in place, it starts retracting and then makes a full mechanical link up with 12 latches that lock in place to make a permanent seal between the 2 spacecraft. And all of that will take place basically at the moment of contact. And we do have a short piece of animation that shows these final minutes of the approach of Zarya to Swesda, and we'll run that for you. And what you see is as mentioned, Zarya is the active vehicle closing in on Swesda, the 2 spacecraft flying high above the Russian ground sites. Again, the docking will take place over Kazakhstan at an altitude of about 229 statute miles. And once again, that docking, once it takes place, all of those hooks and latches will be closed. Should be closed within about 15 minutes or so after the initial contact. So that sets the stage for what we expect to see here in the next 15 or 20 minutes or so. And again, all has gone very smoothly throughout last evening and this morning, Moscow time. And so we're waiting with great anticipation for the upcoming communications pass, again, which will, the 2 vehicles should move into that communications pass about 34 minutes after the hour. So we're looking at about 15 minutes, 16 minutes or so from now. So we'll be standing by and giving updates as we hear them on the loops here in the Mission Control Center. And again, the docking, though scheduled for 44 minutes after the hour, could come a minute or so early. But we expect to get that communications pass and television, our first television, from the Swesda service module looking at the International Space Station during that final approach. Now, this is Mission Control Korolev. Go ahead.
Back here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room in Houston to give viewers a flavor of the flurry of flights about to begin with the arrival of the Swesda service module with the International Space Station. This flight control room, which has been manned periodically since the launch of the Zarya control module as the first component of the International Space Station back on November 20th, 1998. This team of flight controllers continuously monitors either through a full team of flight controllers or through a station duty officer the activities and all of the systems on both the Zarya and the Unity, the connecting node, soon to become a 3-module space station with the arrival of the Swesda. There are 2 flight control rooms that are actually in operation, this being the so-called blue flight control room, or the main International Space Station flight control room, which will be populated around the clock once humans begin permanent occupancy of the space station with the arrival of the Expedition 1 crew later this fall. In the interim, when there are non-dynamic operations occurring, this team of flight controllers can also be found upstairs in what is called the increment flight control room, in which so-called steady-state operations, the monitoring of module systems in an unpopulated state, take place 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. And again, to indicate how busy everything is becoming in terms of space station operations, as we speak, with Swesda less than 25 minutes away from its docking with the International Space Station, down the hall from where we sit in the Space Shuttle Flight Control Room, another team of flight controllers is conducting a simulation as we speak for the STS-92 docking with the International Space Station on the mission which will carry the Z-1 Trust, the early framework for the International Space Station that will be mounted and locked in place on top of the Unity connecting node, that flight to take place in early October. So multiple operations going on at the same time. This is, you're looking at a live picture. You just saw a live picture of this shuttle flight control room where a simulation is going on right now for the STS-92 mission, even as we are on the verge of linking up the International Space Station with Swesda. A time indeed, the air traffic pattern around the International Space with the launch of a Progress resupply ship, multiple shuttle flights to come, and the permanent occupancy of the International Space Station later this fall. Back to you, Kyle and Korolev.
Thanks, Rob. As he mentioned, it certainly is a busy time, and again, flight controllers over here now obviously working around the clock. Even the Houston Support Group team is now supporting around-the-clock operations for both Swesda and the International Space Station, which obviously are scheduled to become one here in the next 20 to 25 minutes or so. Some of the statistics on Swesda, for those that aren't familiar with the module, it's essentially the same size and shape as the Russian Mir space station's core module. It's actually a module that's about 43 feet long and 97 feet in from tip to tip on the solar arrays. The module has what's considered three working compartments. There's a large diameter part of the working compartment, which is about 14 feet in diameter, and then there's a small diameter compartment about 10 feet in diameter. And then there are 4 docking ports on the forward end of the module, 3 forward ports on the transfer compartment, and then a single aft port that will be used for Soyuz and Progress vehicles carrying resupply items and space station crews. That Soyuz spacecraft also will serve as an emergency return vehicle should it become necessary. The module weighs about 43,000 pounds at the point which at liftoff, and then it will, over the period of time, will be outfitted and eventually will have a mass of about 50,000 pounds or so. The forward-facing docking port will be the one docked to the Zarya control module of the International Space Station, and then the top port, or the nadir port, will actually be used for a future docking compartment and then a universal docking module that the Russian partner in the International Space Station program will provide. The module has about 14 windows, actually 13 windows, and it will house much of the crew's life support systems, which produces the electricity, the oxygen for the crew members, also provides the carbon dioxide removal system. So basically, Swesda is the home for future crews that will live aboard the space station, so it will set the stage for that permanent human presence in space. There is enough propellant on board the Zarya control module to support a number of docking opportunities, and the one coming up here in about 20 minutes or so is considered the first of those docking opportunities, although we certainly anticipate and hope that none of the other opportunities will be required. But certainly there are plans in place that would support future docking attempts should the one tonight not be able to take place for some reason or another. Again, the plan is to get our communications ground site in about 10 minutes. So that's the point where we expect to start hearing the Russian flight control team once again, providing real-time inputs to the Russian flight director, and then that information, of course, will be provided as soon as we hear the updated information on the International Space Station's final approach to the Zarya control module. So we'll be back in just a few minutes when we move within that ground site, and again, we're anticipating to get a black and white television picture from Swesda. It will be the first views from Swesda of the International Space Station on that final approach. This is Mission Control Korolev. welcome back, everybody, to the Russian Mission Control Center. We're just a few minutes away now from the communications pass, the ground site communications pass. The clock's counting down to 3 minutes and 40 seconds until we move within that communications range of the Russian ground stations, again with the Swesda service module and the Zarya control module, the International Space Station, closing in for that final approach and docking. All continuing to go smoothly. We heard just a moment ago the Russian flight director calling for all of his flight control positions to report in and be sure that they're all on console ready to start monitoring data for this final approach and docking. Again, the two spacecraft, once they get, we expect when they get within this communications range, should be about 200 meters or so apart. And there'll be a period of time where there's some station keeping that will allow all the flight controllers to make sure all of the telemetry that they're seeing matches what's expected before the automatic docking sequence kicks into place. There's about a 5-minute period of time where the Russian flight control team actually can send a command that would abort the rendezvous should that become necessary if someone were to see telemetry that was out of order. If that command is not sent, then the system on board, the Coors automatic rendezvous and docking system, will take over at about 5 minutes before docking, and again take over from that point. So any abort of the docking after that point would be handled by the onboard computers. And again, all has gone very smoothly throughout the night and this morning, and we're just standing by to reacquire that communications link through the Russian ground sites again here in just a couple of minutes at about 35 minutes after the hour, just under 2 minutes from now. The last two orbits are essentially the busiest for the particularly for the Zarya control module, which is obviously in control of the final rendezvous sequence. Its onboard computer system, the motion control system, has been activated, obviously, and has been controlling the vehicle's path and interception of the Swesda service module. The last several hours, again, the two spacecraft were maneuvered to their rendezvous positions, and the actual go from the flight control team over in Houston to the Russian flight control team was given about 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, and that was at a point where the Unity node's early communication system was powered down, and once that actually took place, the power draw was down to about 170 watts or so. And that then allowed the Russian flight control team to activate the automatic docking system called Coors, and they ran a complete test of both what's called semi-sets of the Coors docking system, and both of those half sets, as they're known, were tested and checked out to be fine. Then, shortly after 7 p.m. Eastern Time, the Zarya control module's docking mechanism was powered on, remembering that that probe of the docking mechanism was actually powered on and extended yesterday, but now the docking mechanism was then repowered on just about an hour and a half ago in preparation for this upcoming docking, with the docking now less than 10 minutes away. One of the other parts of the sequence leading up to this rendezvous and docking was a complete checkout of the motion control system using what's known as star mappers. Those also on the service module, and again, both sets of solar arrays, those on the service module, those on the Zarya control module, were repositioned to place them in the desired position to minimize any vibrations that are imparted at the point of contact. When the two spacecraft actually do make contact, that the sensors automatically detect that and send commands to Zarya's thruster jets to actually fire to push the two vehicles gently together to form that that initial contact and capture of the mechanical latches. And we do have a report now that they are in communications range, and the initial reports are they are at 200 meters. At this point, the two spacecraft are at 200 meters and at a station-keeping position. This is that point where they spend a few minutes reviewing all of the telemetry data to make sure everything is in order before the final approach to the Swesda service module. Again, Swesda, the Russian word that stands for star, is just about to become the living quarters, the permanent home for astronauts and cosmonauts who will reside on the space station and carry out experiments even while the complex is being built around them. And now that the two spacecraft are in a communications, in the first views from the Swesda service module, looking at the Zarya control module. Again, this at a distance of about 200 meters apart. And again, this view from a camera mounted on the docking end of Swesda looking toward the International Space Station. From this view, you can actually make out the small thruster jets firing on Zarya as it station keeps at that distance. And again, all remaining on schedule for docking. Very quiet, no reports of anything out of ordinary as these final minutes tick by toward the docking. Now the rendezvous has once again begun at the Swesda. This view again looking toward the International Space Station. And the reports are that the closing rate is less than 1 meter per second. That rate will actually drop down to a point of about as little as 0.2 meters per second, so a very slow closing rate at the point which the two spacecraft will contact. And the range now 160 meters. One point of note, the camera view that you're looking at with the two vehicles moving into daylight tends to balloon a little bit, and it more than likely will settle down for the docking, although not required. We're now the closing rate about, again, 0.9 meters per second, Now we're looking at the two spacecraft at a distance apart of only 100 meters. The range now about 50 meters. The closing rate now down to 0.6 meters per second. Now 40 meters apart. Again, all still go with the docking. Clock's counting down to that docking less than 3 minutes away. Again, this entire rendezvous now from here on in is being automatically controlled by Swesda's onboard computers and its automatic docking system cores. The telemetry now showing the closing rate now down to about 0.1, a little more than 0.1 meters per second. All very quiet. Russian flight controllers not reporting anything on the loops other than the range and the range rate. The reports are that in all of the angles, the pitch, yaw, and roll are exactly as expected. Should be less than a minute away from docking. The range down near around 10 meters or so. And Zarya is now on final approach. We're standing by for confirmation of the initial contact. We have contact confirmed. Capture is confirmed. We do have capture confirmed. We do have confirmation that we do have contact and capture. Now we have this view from Swesda, now firmly attached to the International Space Station. The contact and capture coming at 4:45 this morning Moscow time. That's 8:45 Eastern time, as the two spacecraft flew high over the northeast portions of Kazakhstan. Again, we have a successful capture of Swesda now as it becomes a permanent member of the International Space Station. Now that the initial mechanical capture has been completed, the automatic docking system starts the process of letting the two vehicles dampen out the rates. This is accomplished by actual small shock absorbers that allow the two vehicles to settle down before the probe mechanism is powered on and retracted, which actually makes that final permanent docking of the two vehicles together. The alignment mechanism inside this docking probe actually aligns a structural ring so that as the vehicles begin to come together when the docking probe is retracted. There was much clapping that could be heard in the on the floor of the Russian Mission Control Center here at the point where the contact and the actual initial capture was confirmed. The communications pass actually will last for another 10 minutes or so. This will give the team plenty of time to see the final mating of the two vehicles completed with the structural ring completely retracted after this initial alignment that's underway right now. And we also have confirmation that both spacecraft's onboard computer systems have inhibited all of the thruster firing, so both spacecraft are in free drift. This is essentially a period of time that will allow no thrusters to be fired during the critical moments of closing all of the hooks and latches between the two spacecraft. There's actually two hook drive mechanisms on the docking ring, and each one of those hooks controls 6 different hooks on either side of the docking mechanism. Again, the Zarya control module in the International Space Station closed in and captured the Swesda service module high above Kazakhstan at 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time. It was 4:45 a.m. here in Moscow. And as can be expected, the Russian flight control team all business as they continue to watch over these final minutes as the two vehicles begin to make a permanent seal that will allow those hatches to eventually be opened by future crew members that will live aboard the International Space Station. all continuing to go smoothly as the latches close, which make a permanent connection of Swesda to its new home. The gates are now open for continued construction of the International Space Station, with a Progress supply vehicle scheduled to launch on August 6th. The next shuttle visit to the International Space Station scheduled for September 8th, and the next assembly flight to the International Space Station, the shuttle mission scheduled for early October. So it's setting the stage now for a very busy period of time, and also sets the stage for Bill Shepard, Yuri Gitzenko, and Sergei Krikalev to head to their new home scheduled for the end of October or November. And Rob, I guess I understand you have a special guest with you there at the console who probably has a smile on his face right now.
Kyle, with the arrival of Swesda and the International Space Station, the ISS has almost doubled in size within a matter of minutes, setting the stage for the permanent human occupancy of the new orbital outpost. With me here in the Mission Control Center in Houston in the ISS Flight Control Room, a very happy Expedition 1 Commander Bill Shepard, who not too much down the road will be opening the hatch to the service module to float inside with his crew members to begin permanent human habitation of the ISS. Shep, your reaction to the arrival of the new home for you on orbit?
Well, Rob, you got 5 crews of astronauts and cosmonauts, some of whom have been training here in Houston and in Russia for over 4 years, who are real happy that we got this milestone behind us, because now we have a pretty concrete schedule for the rest of the year. So we've got a lot of happy astronauts and cosmonauts here tonight, right now.
When you finally arrive at the station 2 days after your launch from Baikonur atop a Soyuz rocket with your crewmates, what type of facility are you going to find as you open the hatch to Swesda and float in for the first time?
Well, as you know, we've got a lot of outfitting flights going on before us to put a lot of gear in the station. Our job's going to be to set it up and really do the outfitting, and you might call it a shakedown cruise, if you will. I think that's the main job for the first expedition, making sure that everything that we put on board is functional and working the way that we want. And hopefully maybe a little testing, making sure that the life support equipment does what it's supposed to do, the computer controls what we expect, all the safety features and alarms are functional, stuff like that.
After so many months, so many years of discussion about this service module, it's finally part of the International Space Station, formally locked in place. What milestone did we pass here tonight with the docking?
Well, I've been fortunate to be part of what we're doing here for more than 7 years. This is something that kind of was a dream in 1993. I think it's a huge accomplishment tonight. It has not been pretty. There have been many hard times, many heated discussions, but clearly I think the torch has been passed from Russia back to the U.S. and the rest of our international partnerships to carry the load now, because the heat's on us to keep the schedule going and the station building.
Shep, thanks very much. Good luck. We'll see you in the fall at Baikonur.
Okay, Rob.
Kyle, back to you in Korolyov. A busy time there in the moments that have followed docking.
Well, thanks, guys. It's a pretty emotional moment for, I think, everybody, and obviously a very elated teams on both sides of the ocean and around the world, obviously. The Russian flight control team are reporting that all has gone very smoothly with the docking, the retraction of the probe, the final latches beginning to secure the 2 vehicles together, and so all could not have gone any smoother this morning with the rendezvous and docking of the International Space Station to Swesda. Of course, there were plans in place in the event that the docking did not occur as expected, and of course those contingency plans, while obviously needed, were not needed this morning. So that's obviously a good sign. So now we've got one spacecraft on orbit called the International Space Station, and it's comprised now of 3 modules, and a whole series of assembly flights are essentially ready to go, with more than 300,000 pounds of hardware at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida either in final processing or in processing for flights to the International Space Station, setting the stage, of course, for that initial crew commanded by Bill Shepard to launch later this year in the fall. We do expect to have a post-docking news conference from here in the Russian Mission Control Center, and we're scheduling that to begin actually in about 5 minutes or so. So we'll take a break and reconfigure for that post-launch news conference that will include some of the major players that oversaw a lot of the activities that have taken place since Swesda's launch, in fact, since Zarya's launch back a year and a half ago. So with that, we'll sign off and reconfigure for the press conference, again, the docking of the International Space Station with the Swesda service module taking place at 8:45 p.m. over Russian ground stations high above northeastern Kazakhstan. And the two spacecraft, now one, with the International Space Station flying free and flying in excellent shape. This is Mission Control, Korolev.
Раз.
Доброе утро, уважаемые дамы и господа, хочу вас всех поздравить с этим большим событием. Я понимаю, что все мы очень восторжены, но просто сегодня большой день. Вот тот план, который начинался почти 10 лет назад, несмотря ни на какие трудности, несмотря на сложности, которые мы все переживаем, он успешно развивается. Коллег американских, от господина Голдина. И я думаю, что у нас есть все основания на фоне вот этих всех событий, которые происходят, в общем-то, решить те проблемы, которые у нас существуют внутри нашей страны. Я думаю, что в самое ближайшее время будет понятно и ясно, как дальше будут строиться эти отношения и в нашей возможности продолжать эту программу прекрасную и этот крупный проект. Я вас всех поздравляю. Спасибо за то, что вы интересуетесь и даже в это раннее утро здесь все находитесь. Спасибо вам большое.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to congratulate you on this great event. I understand that it was not easy, and when we started our project 10 years ago, and despite all the difficulties, we managed to start this program, and now we got to a point of this great achievement, and I'd like to congratulate you on this great event. And I believe that despite our great difficulties inside the country, we'll be able to figure out how to resolve our problem, and we'll build our future relationship after resolving our problems. And I'd like to congratulate everyone on this great event, and I can see that despite such an early hour, you are keeping interest, and thank you, and once again, congratulations.
Дорогие коллеги, дамы и господа, я тоже хотел бы присоединиться к поздравлениям Юрия Николаевича. Действительно, это знаменательный день, это начало развертывания очень большой работы, это очень ключевой момент в создании международной станции. Я, конечно, далек от мысли, то, что сказал Юрий Николаевич, что это нам поможет решить все проблемы в России. Но хотя бы одну проблему, это поддержка космической, пилотируемой космонавтики, мы должны, обязаны решить. Это, безусловно, факт, который нам позволит более решительно действовать. В этой работе задействованы очень многие организации, к этому пути мы шли, было очень много трудностей, было очень много сомнений, было много возражений и так далее. Но в конце концов мы все преодолены. Здесь участвуют и Соединенные Штаты Америки, Россия, прежде всего в данном случае, Соединенные Штаты Америки, Европейское космическое агентство. Оно иногда просто обижается, что вот в нашей всегда конференции не очень мы отмечаем, что действительно они создали бортовой комплекс, цифровой комплекс, математика создавалась у нас, все разветвленные все интерфейсы оставались в России, а центральная машина создавалась в Европе. Я специально отмечаю этот вопрос, поскольку здесь вот были такие некоторые упреки, то, что мы забываем Европейское космическое агентство. Я одним словом хочу поздравить всех участников, кто принимал вот в этом важном, очень важном деле. И я хотел бы всем нам и всем вам пожелать, чтобы такие события как можно были чаще и регулярнее, и без всяких опозданий. Спасибо вам.
Well, I'd like to say that naturally it will not resolve all our problems, but if we could resolve problems in supporting the space exploration, it would help us a lot. And now we can see that with the participation from different nations, from Russia first of all, from the United States and European Space Agency, we managed to achieve such a great thing, and sometimes we would forget about the great input from the European Space Agency, and I want to say that this time we can see that it was really a great contribution to this program, and we would like to mention the construction of the onboard digital processing system. Russia provided software, but the hardware was built by the European Space Agency. And in this work, we could see inputs and contributions from different research centers, from different organizations, and together we managed to get to such a key point in our space program. And I'd like to congratulate everyone, and I'd like to wish that we'll have such events more in the future without delays and on timely basis.
Дорогие друзья, я сделал ошибку, не назвав, перечислив оттенок сделал на Европу, но не сделал на незалежную Украину. Я говорю, а Яков смотрит на меня, я думал, что это не Анатолий скажет о том, что в этом участвует Украина.
And when I mentioned about the great contribution from the European Space Agency, I forgot to mention Ukraine, and maybe Anatoly will fill in this gap.
Уважаемые дамы и господа, я поздравляю вас всех с этим крупным успехом. Этого момента мы ждали 7 лет.
And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to congratulate you on such a great event, which we've been waiting for 7 years.
Теперь можно уже смело сказать, что Международная космическая станция будет жить. До этого момента мы пока себе не могли этого позволить. А сегодня мы об этом говорим, и это утро действительно доброе.
And now we can say it's a very happy morning, and we can say now, definitely can say that the complex will live on, and now we are absolutely positive about it.
Завершился один из самых главных этапов создания элементов Международной космической станции тогда, когда могут приступить к работе уже пилотируемые экипажи, то есть экипажи на борту этой станции.
And now we have completed a very important stage in the deployment of the International Space Station, and now we've come to a point when we can start manned missions.
Мне бы хотелось подчеркнуть еще особенности одного момента. Когда сегодня происходила стыковка, то активным модулем был модуль «Заря». Но он летал в такой комплектации вместе с американским модулем. Вот в такой комплектации стыковка и отработка математики проходила впервые.
And I'd like to point out a very important fact in today's docking. Because Zarya FGB was an active element, but it was flying together jointly with an American module Unity, and it was done for the first time when docking was done jointly with the American module, and the software and all the plans were tested today for the first time.
И я хотел бы поблагодарить сейчас действительно очень многие наши коллективы, и не только наши, которые работали над созданием вот этих элементов космической станции, всех наших КБ, все наши КБ, заводы, принимавшие участие, а их даже перечислить очень сложно. Но хочу отдельно поздравить с этим успехом нашего уважаемого коллегу Якова Евгеньевича Айзенберга из Украины, который именно отвечали, его фирма, за систему управления и стыковку. Еще раз поздравляю вас с этим крупным успехом.
And I'd like to thank many organizations who were involved in this project, but I'd like to say special thanks to Mr. Eisenberg, who provided software and who made it possible from Ukraine.
Уважаемые коллеги, уважаемые дамы и господа, разрешите по поручению Межгосударственной комиссии сердечно поздравить вас с этим знаменательным событием в истории космонавтики и поблагодарить всех тех, кто обеспечили сегодняшнюю блестящую работу. Вы были свидетелями того, что как работали расчеты слаженно, профессионально и логическим завершением явилась успешная стыковка сегодня на орбите. Поэтому большое спасибо и благодарность всем, кто принимал участие в сегодняшней работе. Спасибо, благодарю вас.
And on behalf of the Interstate Commission, I'd like to thank each and everyone who took part in this great operation, and the whole team worked very professionally, jointly, and it was done at the highest possible level. And I'd like to thank everyone who took part in this great event and who made it possible.
Okay. Well, I'd like to add my congratulations to those that have already been made here. Speaking for the NASA side, this is an outstanding achievement this morning, and something we've been waiting for quite some time.
И от нас я хотел бы поблагодарить и поздравить всех с этим знаменательным событием, которое мы ожидали долгое время, и хотели бы выразить слова благодарности всем, кто принимал участие.
And as you can see and have heard, this is truly an international program with many different countries participating. This is the beginning of a new era, in my opinion, in space, with the world participating on this great project. And my congratulations to all of my colleagues who designed, built, operated, and made this happen.
И мы видим, что это воистину международный проект с участием от разных стран мира, и мы видим, что это явилось началом новой эры, когда весь мир будет строить международную станцию, и мы хотели бы поблагодарить всех, кто принимал участие в разработке и строительстве станции.
In the name of ESA, I would also like to congratulate our Russian partner. It was a fantastic event. A number of us were able to witness it here today. We also covered it back to Europe. It's a very important event for the space station program. We are also very proud that we could assist in this event through the provision of the data management system for the service module. It has only worked now for 220 orbits. There will be tens of thousands of orbits following in the course of the space station program, and we're looking forward together with you to see how the system is going to work for a long time to come.
И от лица Европейского космического агентства мы хотели бы поздравить всех с этим знаменательным событием и отметить величайшую профессиональную работу российской стороны. И мы горды тем, что Европейское космическое агентство тоже внесло свой вклад в эту программу, поставив на станцию систему обработки данных компьютер бортовой, который сейчас работает очень ограниченное время. Мы надеемся, что в дальнейшем он будет работать многие десятилетия, будет на борту, совершая десятки тысяч витков вокруг Земли. Большое спасибо и благодарим вас за работу.
Уважаемые дамы и господа, мне хотелось бы поздравить не только всех тех, кто принимал участие в проведении и осуществлении полета, и особенно его заключительной стадии стыковки сегодня, но также особо поздравить космонавтов и ученых всех тех стран, которые принимают участие в проекте Международной космической станции.
Well, I'd like to congratulate everyone who participated in this project and who helped to design to build it, but I'd like to express special thanks and special congratulations to cosmonauts and scientists who were part of this project.
Космонавтов теперь есть куда лететь на работу, а ученые, принимавшие участие в подготовке огромного количества научно-прикладных исследований на борту Международной станции, теперь тоже имеется первая очередь станции, где можно через определенное время начать проведение того, ради чего станция создается.
And now we have a home where cosmonauts can fly, and now scientists, they got their let's say, a laboratory where they can carry out their experiments, and we laid out the stage for such great operations, and this is why I mentioned cosmonauts and scientists who got their field and the place to work.
Так, значит, как официальная часть у нас выполнена. Если есть вопросы, пожалуйста, кому будет их задавать, называйте себя.
Okay, our official part is over, and now we can start questions and answers. But please introduce yourself and set in order.
Владимир Яценко, редактор английского издания журнала «Сумма технологий». 25 лет назад, в июле 1975 года, была успешно завершена первая международная стыковка советского корабля «Союз» и американского «Аполлон». Сегодня в зале я видел много тех людей, которые участвовали и принимали участие в этом успешном проекте. Мне тоже посчастливилось участвовать в этом проекте. И у меня вопрос. В какой степени опыт проекта ЭПАС использовался технически и организационно при подготовке и проведении проекта МКС?
Well, 25 years ago in 1975, we witnessed the first international docking in space. It was Soyuz Apollo docking, and I can see many people in this building who took part in that project, and I'd like to know to what extent from the organizational and technical standpoint it helped to do the docking today.
Ну, действительно, в 1975 году это была первая наша совместная работа с американскими коллегами. Действительно был получен большой опыт, но, к большому сожалению, был перерыв в наших отношениях, хотя у нас были планы не только стыковать «Союзы» и «Аполлон». Мы вели переговоры в тот период о стыковке корабля «Шаттл» со станциями «Салют». Но по независящим от нас причинам, по политическим соображениям, наступило такое затишье в наших отношениях. Поэтому, когда мы возвратились к этой проблеме в 1992 году, многие наши коллеги, ключевые фигуры ушли с этого поля деятельности в силу большого времени, которое прошло. И нам пришлось, конечно, работать с чистого листа. Но, конечно же, опыт был принят, тот, который получен. Но этот был опыт, как бы сказать, мелкомасштабный. То, что произошло в 90-е годы, это крупномасштабные проекты. Это первый этап, это стыковка станции «Мир», это крупные станции с кораблем «Шаттл». Были задействованы значительные подразделения. Ну, то есть мы на более уже таком высоком уровне были задействованы значительно большее количество предприятий, страны уже стали другие, культура подхода решения вопроса. Ну, все было решено масса вопросов. Ну и сами понимаете, сопоставлять, скажем, стыковку с «Салютом», это был действительно крупнейший шаг в 1975 году, но сопоставлять это с тем, что произошло в 90-х годах, это, конечно, как говорят в Одессе, две большие разницы. На Украине, незалежной Украине, две большие разницы. Но это действительно крупномасштабный проект, который развивался поэтапно, и завершился сегодняшним днем, который нам предстоит, эту работу предстоит нам продолжить еще много-много лет. Если тот полет длился несколько суток, то эта будет программа рассчитана на десятилетия. А если нам повезет, то и значительно больше. Так же, как мы по миру рассчитывали на 3-5 лет, а сегодня уже 14 лет работы.
But I want to say that in 1975 we had an international docking, Soyuz Apollo docking, but unfortunately we had a long break in our relationship and our cooperation, and many people who were a part of that project in 1975, they left, and we have built our let's say, today's docking and our cooperation on our achievements that we had in 1990s. And when we started, let's say, we can say that when we started our joint program in 1992, we used the experience of such a great program as Mir Shuttle, when we had dockings between orbital station Mir and such quite a big space vehicle shuttle. And during this period of time when we have no joint flights, we had many planes like dockings between shuttle and station Salute, predecessor of the orbital station Mir. But unfortunately, for many reasons of mostly political nature, we couldn't do it, and we had a period when we had no joint programs and no cooperation. And I can say that the program in 1990s helped us a lot, and it built the foundation for our today's docking. And speaking of the previous experience of 1975, it was a great experience, but it cannot be compared to the magnitude of our today's program. The mission in 1975 lasted only for several days, but we believe that our today's cooperation would bring much longer joint missions that will last more than 10 years, maybe much more, because initially Station Mir was designed for 3 or 4 years, and now we can see that it's been in orbit for more than 14, and we can expect that the same will be with the International Space Station.
Юрий Караш, space.com. У меня вопрос к Анатолию Ивановичу Киселеву и отчасти к Юрию Павловичу Семенову. Расскажите, пожалуйста, о той роли, которую сыграли специалисты Центра имени Хруничева в осуществлении сегодняшней стыковки и как были распределены обязанности между специалистами Центра Хруничева и РКК «Энергия» в ходе проведения данного мероприятия. Спасибо.
Well, this is the question for Mr. Kiselev and Mr. Semyonov. How can you describe the input, the role played by the State Space Center Khrushchev and the Russian Space Corporation Energia? How can you describe the interaction between two space organizations, and who played which role, and how the, let's say, the operation was shared between two organizations?
Вы знаете, наверное, уже раннее утро, все устали, и в этом помещении очень жарко. И если будем сейчас рассказывать о распределении работ, то мы здесь останемся надолго. Я лучше отвечу очень коротко. Это совместная работа, и, как видите, очень довольно-таки успешная. И специалистов Хруничева, и специалистов Энергии. И я действительно нужно их поблагодарить за эту работу. А если это кому-то интересно, мы в рабочем порядке все это расскажем.
Well, I know it's really early in the morning.
Вопросы.
It's really early in the morning and everybody is tired. And speaking of, let's say, job assignment and sharing labor, it will take such a long time that it will be impossible to finish it today. But if you are interested, we can do it and describe who did what. And just in short, I can say that it was a joint work and it was done jointly and successfully.
В нашей манере такие вопросы, на такие ответы давать в неофициальной обстановке.
Where usually we will answer such questions in unofficial.
Если вы будете приглашены, мы вам там все расскажем.
But of course, if you are invited to this unofficial gathering.
Андрей Филиппов, агентство «Новости науки», Ньюс-Энджелсе. Вопрос к Совету генеральных конструкторов. Мне бы хотелось спросить от лица журналистского корпуса, есть ли перспектива у российского журналиста побывать на Международной космической станции? Как вы к этому относитесь? И если есть какие-то возможности, вот у тех, кто уже проходил, Караш, Филиппов, я думаю, здесь еще люди есть. Ваша точка зрения на этот вопрос?
Well, this is the question for the General Design Board. This is a question from a journalist, and the question is it possible, is there a chance for a journalist to go to the International Space Station?
Ну, видите, когда мы с вами говорим о программе, которая рассчитывается на 15 лет, говорить о том, что такой возможности нет, наверное, было бы неправильно. Но, как вы сами понимаете, это вопрос, который в любом случае встретится с проблемой финансирования. Значит, если мы добьемся ситуации, когда такие крупномасштабные проекты все-таки будут обеспечиваться в значительной степени государством, то можно решать и эту проблему. А когда будем говорить, она временная, мы надеемся на это, ситуация, когда обеспеченность ресурсами даже в рамках этой программы меньше 30%, то вы сами понимаете, что каждый пуск у нас считанный, и он прежде всего несет технологическую и профессиональную нагрузку именно с точки зрения обеспечения строительства станции и поддержания ее ресурсов. Давайте вместе, значит, кроме негатива и стенаний по поводу умирания российской космонавтики, все-таки найдем некие положительные мотивы в нашей жизни. Вот я хотел бы сказать, что значит, мы прожили полгода. Значит, в России сделано 19 запусков. Значит, полностью восстановлено реноме Протона. У нас вот в этой программе, в этой пусковой программе, значит, был момент, которого вообще не было в истории советской космонавтики, когда в течение 19 дней было проведено 3 пуска Протона. Но, к сожалению, вот ни один из этих фактов, он как-то, ну, 4 за 35 дней... ну, может быть. Значит, это как-то не находит отражения. Понимаете, вот мы с большим удовольствием выясняем примат. Значит, кто главнее, центр Хруничева или РКК «Энергия»? Ну, ебо, ну это что, самый главный вопрос у нас здесь. Почему надо обязательно подпускать эти раздражители? Так, давайте лучше все вместе действительно, значит, усилия на поддержку. Вы понимаете, вот я сегодня с Голдиным говорил, мы на пуске были все вместе. Наши коллеги, они вообще не понимают, что у нас происходит. Они просто не понимают. Они говорят, расскажите нам ваше ноу-хау, как без денег можно работать, понимаете, с такими крупными программами. Я говорю, я не могу вам этого сказать. Почему? Потому что если я вам это скажу, вам тоже перестанут давать деньги. Так что давайте вместе все заниматься в том числе и вопросом, и проблемой полета журналиста. Спасибо.
Okay, it would be wrong to say that it will be impossible for a journalist to fly to a station, to the International Space Station, the mission of which is planned for at least 15 years. But we must say that now we are facing pretty severe financial problems, and a lot will depend on the funding, because now we can get only 30% of the required funding, and of course each launch, each mission required the maximum output of each and every crew member, and at this point we cannot be absolutely sure that we can afford to fly journalists at this point, but we shouldn't focus only on negative things. We should see more positive things, and as an example I can say that during these 6 months we managed to achieve a lot, and we managed to do something that was never done before in the past. For example, we managed to rebuild the good name of the launch vehicle Proton, and in 16 days we saw 4 launches of the Proton rocket, which was absolutely unprecedented before. And we shouldn't speak only of, let's say, negative things, or to trying to find out who is better, who is, let's say, higher, Khrushchev sent, or Russian Space Corporation Energia. We should be more positive in our coverage of the space exploration, and when we have achievements, unfortunately it's not covered, it's not in the papers as it should be, and nobody speaks about such great things, such great achievements. And when I talked to my colleague, to my colleague Administrator Golden, and he couldn't understand some things, and he was looking for an answer explaining the meaning of Russian know-how, and the know-how is how can I do such great things with such mega funding. And tell you, because if I tell you, you'll get no money for your program.
Ольга Пастухова, программа «Вести». Юрий Николаевич, уже понятно, что все благополучно по первым признакам. Мы знаем, что на 30 октября запланирован старт первой на международную станцию. Но учитывая такое благополучное развитие событий со служебным модулем, возможно ли ускорение темпов? Может, пораньше экипаж уже сможет отправиться на международную станцию?
We can see that at this point everything looks okay and fingers crossed, and we can see that everything was very successful, and we know that the launch of the first crew is scheduled for October 30th.
Понимаете, у нас вот была дилемма после запуска, значит, мы никак не преодолеем вот наш прошлый менталитет. Какому-нибудь празднику обязательно надо, значит, подарок сделать такой. Значит, и мы вот с Юрием Павловичем, Анатолием Ивановичем, значит, смотрели сделать на 5 дней раньше. Ну, понятно, для чего, да. Потом решили, что не надо судьбу испытывать. Есть программа, понимаете, это программа, которая учитывает интересы, ну, не только нас, наших партнеров. Есть определенная последовательность работ. Поэтому я не вижу необходимости вот так сходу, значит, брать и менять ту программу, которая у нас, значит, разработана. Любые изменения оправданные, если или они улучшают программу, или они вызваны необходимостью устроить каких-то критических ситуаций, мы иногда попадаем. Я думаю, что мы, наверное, не будем менять те назначенные сроки и те этапы, которые согласованы всеми партнерами.
Well, we cannot overcome completely our old, let's say, philosophy approach when we plan some launches to dedicate to some special dates, great holidays, great days in the national history, and there were ideas to move the docking, let's say, 5 days earlier, and you can understand why. And for example, there were many ideas to dedicate some launches and plan some launches to special days, but then we realized it's not a good thing to do. The only rationale for changing dates, changing program is to resolve some critical situation or to make the program better, to make some improvements in the program, and we got to take into account not only our needs, our consideration, but considerations and plans of our international partners, and we have already developed the assembly sequence plan. We see no reason for changing it, and let's keep it as it is, and we cannot see no rationale to change the date of the launch of the first expedition. Okay, now the last question. And the question is, and now we could say a successful launch, and maybe somebody from behind the Kremlin wall will see it and maybe provide more funding for the space program.
Мы, во-первых, хотим, чтобы пришли не новые, а чтобы отдали старые.
Where we cannot expect new funds, we would like to get at least what is owed to us.
Но, если честно, мы, конечно, очень рассчитываем, что все-таки вот такие этапы и такие события, которые, в общем-то, наверное, не безразличны для всего мирового сообщества, и они показывают, что возможности России очень велики, и, в общем-то, она сохранена и развивается как интеллектуальная держава, и, конечно, такие вещи государство должно поддерживать.
And such great events, they attract universal global attention, and it shows that Russia managed to preserve and maintain its great capabilities, and we sincerely hope that it will be noticed by our state men, and they will provide sufficient funds for the space programs.
Спасибо всем большое за участие, спасибо за внимание и всех еще раз поздравляю.
Thank you for your attention, thank you for your participation, thank you all, and goodbye.